Hey folks, Nate Bukaty from the Heart and Goal podcast here, and we're getting excited for the World Cup. And one of the great ways to be a part of it is the FIFA Fan Fest. The best way to get yourself involved is go to kc2026.com. You can get all the details and register right there. Live acts, entertainments, watch parties, connecting with the world's game. It's the FIFA 2026 Fan Fest right here in Kansas City. Hello, Kansas City. Hello, America. And hello to the world. Once again, welcome to another edition of the Heart and Goal podcast. My name is Nate Bukaty, and today my co-host is the one and only Roger Espinoza. What's up, Roger? How are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here again. Now on my own, not with my wife, Lola Bonta, but I'm very happy to be here with you guys. Watch a lot of the shows, and very happy to be here and not have Benny next to me.
You could start some arguments with you if he was here. We might do that at some point in time, get a little round table going. It was awesome having Lo on the show, and that is a good opportunity to remind everybody, if you haven't had a chance to go back and watch and listen to the previous episodes of Heart and Goal, you need to do so because they'll hold up. They're not like out of date or anything like that, and there's all kinds of great information from Pam Kramer to Cliff Illig to Alan Dietrich to Lola Bonta's episode was an awesome one. We got to play a little a marriage trivia type game with Roger and Lo on that one. Go back and watch all of those because we're getting you ready for the World Cup. It's coming to Kansas City. It's less than 50 days away. It's getting closer and closer. And we got a great guest coming up on the show today, too. One of the most knowledgeable soccer voices in the entire world and from one of the most famous soccer broadcasting families in the entire world. Nico Cantor, who I've had a chance to get to know through work over the last few years, is going to join us on the show here in a little bit. But make sure that wherever you get your podcast, you know, all the different outlets that podcasts are available, you like, you subscribe, you write a review, you interact with us in the comments so that we can interact back with you. And we got to let everybody know about the pod because, man, the World Cup is going to be here before we know it. And one of the things we're doing, Roger, to get everybody ready for the World Cup is trying to figure out, for those of us that have never been a part of it, what's this thing going to be like? You're a veteran of a couple of World Cups. So, like, what's the short answer that you give right there? Like, when you've been there, you've done that, the rest of us that are going to experience this for the first time, what's coming our way?
Oh, I mean, it's amazing would be the word. It's amazing. It's you know, you see all the cultures, you get to see all the people in town, probably you'll see all types of languages around town, and that'll be amazing, not only because of the national teams we're having, but other fans that just want to come into town and see that. So there'll be tons of people, you get to learn about everybody's culture, so it's something like you never lived before.
You've lived a few different cultures, you know, in your life, being bilingual and playing for the Honduran national team while spending, obviously, the majority of your life in the United States as well. Tell me, first of all, just like, what was that experience like, you know, being a dual national and having a chance to play for the country where you were born?
Oh, I love it. I love it, you know, that I have both cultures, something that a lot of people can't say. And so for me, it was amazing because, you know, the player I am now is because, or I was, it was because, you know, I had the Honduran tenacity, I would say, but the American culture, the education here, that made me who I am. You know, that made me see the world in a different way. You know, American being a first world country allows you to see that. And, you know, with that, it made my soccer career a lot better. It gave me the opportunity to go to college. So for me, having both cultures, being able to speak two languages, Spanish and English, I was able to be that guy, the go-to guy in the locker room because, you know, for those guys in college or, you know, that spoke those two languages or on the pros, it gave me the ability to communicate with them. And, you know, being in the United States, you play with many cultures, people from many countries. So when I got to go abroad, I already know how to interact with the player because I knew about their country. And, you know, once you start talking about a song or a food or anything that or a famous person in their culture, it connects you to that. So for me, America, it's definitely the hub for that.
We see a lot of cases in American soccer where there are players at the youth level who could play for the United States. They could play for the country where either their parents came from or where they came from. And sometimes there's that competition, let's see if we can get this kid to play for us. Did you face any of that growing up? When did you realize, okay, Honduras is where I'm going to play?
Growing up, I always wanted to play for the, professional. It was the first thing. And then dream of being in the World Cup. But living in the United States, you're stuck in between two worlds. And so for me, I just wanted to keep going and be the best I could be. I never was able to make it to the youth teams. I was too small, not as fast. I was not mature yet, and so for me, going to college gave me the opportunity to be drafted. And once I was drafted into MLS, Honduras called me first. It was in the U.S. and Peter Vermees came to me and said, "Hey, if you really want to play for U.S., I can call Bob Bradley and tell him to bring you to a camp if it's a possibility right now. I really want you to play for the U.S." So he's the one who wanted me to play for the U.S. And I said, Honduras called me first. I'm the type of player or person, if whoever gives me the first opportunity, that's where I'm going. That's what happens in my youth career with club. That's what happened in college. Junior college came by, and I said, I'm going to go there. And then Ohio State came by, and those were the opportunities I took right away. So for Honduras, I always grew up watching the players. Honduras had never made it to a World Cup the last time they made it to a World Cup was in '82. And so I wasn't even born. And so for me, it was like, all right, this is a challenge. This is something I can go and try to help the team achieve. And so I decided that, Honduras it was. But so for me, it was, they were the ones who called me first, and that's why I made the decision.
Why do you think that was always your response? I'm going with who offered me first.
I don't know, because I feel like that's the team that wants me.
Yeah.
That's the team that really wants me at first. It's the other team didn't think about it early, so they were not thinking about me. So for me, it's the opportunity team that wants me, and so they will give me that opportunity. They're coming out of their way to do it. It happened with in the Premier League with Wigan too. I know they were fighting for relegation. I know that it was a team that that possibly could go play in the championship, but they wanted to give me the opportunity. I knew that I had the opportunity to play there. It wasn't like something where my agent went and trying to sell me to this team or this. They came first, and that's the decision I made.
Yeah, sometimes it seems like when players are trying to decide between the two, they might, which national team has the better chance of making it to the World Cup? Or which national team has a better chance of going far in the World Cup? That doesn't sound like that was your calculus, though.
No, I wanted to play. And you also look at the relationships, like you may have in the field. You may look like who you're going against. That happens in college instead of, I did get recruited by other big schools. But if you look, some of the schools, I was going to go and compete with other under 20 national team guys. And not that I don't like to compete. I love to compete. It's just that you look better in other teams, and you wanna show yourself. And sometimes you might not play because they're in the national team, and coaches see players in the national team different when they're in the youth national team. So for me, it was, all right, I'm gonna go here. In Honduras, there's a big opportunity where my generation was up and coming, and I could slide in any of the positions that I played. It's either left back, left wing, or in the midfield. There was an opportunity there. So for me, it was like, I'm probably gonna play. I'm probably gonna have an opportunity to challenge for a spot. In the U.S., it was stacked.
Yeah. So one of the things that is interesting about this World Cup, now that the field has expanded to 48, we see a handful of teams. One of them that's coming to Kansas City to play, Curacao, who has never played in the World Cup before. You had talked about the long drought for Honduras from, 82 you said, until 2010 then? We get to see some teams that now get to either play in the World Cup for the first time ever or for the first time in a long time. When it came to the qualification process for you guys, was that as big of a deal as actually playing in the World Cup itself? Or what was that? Take me back to that process.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big deal just because we always lost. We're always a point out, and we always either, one time I was very young, I think it was the 2001 qualifications, and I remember watching Honduras, and all they had to do is beat Trinidad at home, and Trinidad and Tobago was already showed up with. They're already out of the World Cup. They're not going. They already are show up with the second team, and Honduras cannot score a goal. And so we always knew we always were there right at the door, and we could never make it. And so for us, this generation was like the golden generation for Honduras. And, I knew that. Everybody in the country knew that. And this was a possibility that we could go. And we also had some older players that also were there that brought the leadership and also with the younger guys. And Honduras had been to U17s, U20 World Cups, Olympics, and this was the part where that generation was just coming up. And so for us, it was intense, but we knew that it was coming. And if it wasn't going to happen in 2010, it was going to happen in 2014.
You use that phrase, golden generation. There's different teams that have had that, and that carries some expectations along with other things. This United States men's national team group has been labeled that a couple of different times, and there's been a debate whether they deserve it. What's the pressure like of carrying that tag, being on a team that's being labeled as a golden generation team for your national team?
I don't think the guys take it as much as a pressure. I think it's more of a confidence because they know they're a good team. And once they call you the golden generation, you know that it's not because of one particular player, it's because of a team, of a group of players. And can they become a team? They're a group of players right now, but can they become a team? They're all born around the same years. They all play in the youth national teams, and I think they all know each other, and there is the excitement. And they all want to play in a World Cup together. I think they go into a World Cup or into a competition with the most positive mind. But obviously, if you start losing, that's where the pressure comes a little bit. But, when you have that golden generation and you go to the main stage, I think get to the main stage because you've been winning. So the confidence is there when you get there. It just matters what happens in that competition. So,
can you take me back to the day you found out you made the World Cup roster? Did you already kind of have a good sense because of qualifying? Yeah, I'm in. Or what were the emotions like when you found out?
I was definitely not sure. I thought I was out. I thought I was out of the World Cup roster. I was in Overland Park, Kansas. I was in my apartment. I just gotten hurt before the qualifying game. The last two games of the Hex, I got hurt, so I didn't show up to those games. And Honduras qualified during those two games, but I don't know if I made enough of impression to be in the World Cup. And then Honduras had this last World Cup break that just happened. Now we had it, and we played the United States in Carson, California, and I played a pretty good game. But like I said, it's a golden generation for Honduras. There's a lot of older guys, a lot of younger guys that are doing very well, and I don't know if I made enough of an impression. And so they don't tell you before. The national team, the coach goes on TV and tells you that moment. But I didn't have the channel in the United States, and so I found out through a cousin who
Wait. So the coach announces the team on television in Honduras.
And television in Honduras, and they don't tell you before if you're in the national team.
So you're sitting there watching like everybody else.
Yeah,
but you don't have TV.
I don't have a TV because I don't have that channel at that time in 2009 or 2010. And so I have no idea until like a minute later that he has announced. I start getting this text. Everybody starts texting me. Everybody starts calling me. And then I realize I'm going to the World Cup.
Your cousin? You say that was your
One of my cousins texted me. Yeah, texted me. But then 30 seconds later, another text. Everybody's just calling me.
That's amazing to me. I always just assumed that the coach would call you up ahead of time and say, hey, this is...
He didn't say anything, and then all the media is calling you from Honduras. They somehow find your number, or they already had the numbers of all the players, and they just are just calling you left and right.
So that had to be a whirlwind at that point.
Yeah, and I don't know what to do. I was very emotional. I was just sitting in my apartment in Overland Park, and I was like, all right, I got to go train tomorrow. Got to make sure I don't get hurt.
Yeah.
Got to play really well. Got to still keep going because there's still a month to go till the World Cup.
And then you go play a couple of warm-up games, right, in South Africa at that point?
Yes. You go to wherever you want to go to camp, and we did camp in Germany.
Okay.
And from there, we just had it 2 weeks before the World Cup. I think you have to be there 2 weeks in South Africa, so we just went. But our friendlies were all in Germany.
Man, what a whirlwind. I mean, I can't even imagine. Then finally, what do you find out? Like, does somebody from the administration reach out to you and tell you, hey, you need to be here at this point in time for the, like, what?
Well, we're a third world country. Everything works different over there. I think after a couple of weeks, they reach out.
Yeah?
Yeah. After a couple of weeks, I think the letter comes to Kansas City, and then they call you and they tell you, they look at your schedule, and you're going to be flying from this game after MLS game to Germany, and this person's going to pick you up there, and then you just meet the team. Because I had the MLS goes in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is the last summer we're doing, but
yeah,
it goes in the summer. So majority of the teams around the world, they're done and they're in camp. So I show up at least probably like, I say 3 days to a week late to the preseason because we had MLS games. So I showed up there late in the national team. I didn't fly with them. I showed up and I wandered myself in Germany trying to get to the camp.
Wow. Then when you got to the actual World Cup itself, was there any kind of aha moment? You know what I mean? Like a moment where you're just like, holy cow, this is real. I'm here. This is the World Cup.
It's real, but you're nervous. You have the pressure. You never think about getting injured until that moment.
Really?
I never thought about getting injured, and there was a few teammates that did the hamstring 2 weeks before the World Cup, and they were not going to make it, and that's when you start getting nervous. That's when you start feeling it.
So like the weeks leading up to the World Cup.
The week leading up, someone, I hope doesn't happen to anybody, but someone gets hurt. Someone gets hurt. People gets hurt. It's just the nature of the sport, and you start feeling all the pressure. You start getting nervous. You want to start, but you don't want to get hurt. And like for me, I just kept going. I said, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. But I was nervous at some point. You know, you're like sore, you feel something, and then you don't want to get out. You want to keep going. And you definitely is a very hostile environment. There's security everywhere. I mean, it's a mix of emotions going on. But then the night before the game, that's when you're like, okay, it's coming. We're playing tomorrow. I'm not injured. If they call my name, I'm ready.
Did you know if you were going to be in the starting 11 the night before?
Nope. Right before you get to the bus, the coach, you go to a team meeting. He gives the scouting report on how we're going to play, the tactical board. And then after he gives the tactical board, he's saying how the other team plays. He's telling you how we're going to play, but without names. And then the very last, he just lifts the paper and says, this is the starting lineup. And you start looking for your name, and there was my name.
Man.
I was shaking.
Yeah?
I was shaking, yes.
Shaking because of excitement or
excitement,
nervousness?
I was
a little bit of
nervous
both?
because I was just in the bubble if I was going to make the World Cup squad or not.
Yeah.
And then once you get to the preseason with the national team before the World Cup, there's the fight. The fight start. I can be starter because you still have the starting 11 that did really well in the qualifying, but everything changes. Your club, you might not have played much in your club. Mm-hmm. Everything changes how you're playing in the leading up games to the World Cup and all that. And so I was doing well, and you keep fighting. So then you're like, there's a possibility I can play here. I did very well. I started 1 or 2 games in the preparation for the World Cup, and then the next day you're full of confidence that you're going to start. At least I was. I was full of confidence just because of how I played. And so for me, I was like ready for that moment. But you never know until they call your name, and then I was like, all right, I'm starting. I cannot even tell my family because you just no service. You just get on the bus and you head into the stadium.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that bus ride like?
Oh, it was in South Africa, so you have like military people behind you and military people in front of you. The bus is going kind of slow. It's the longest ride to the stadium. And I remember it was in Mbombela Stadium. We're playing Chile. In Nelspruit is the city. And remember the bus being the longest bus ride ever.
Did you get jerseys? Did you swap jerseys with players after all your games?
Yeah, I switched that particular game. I swapped jerseys with Arturo Vidal. He was 19 years old and played at Udinese.
Wow. Did you have any idea? I mean, for those that don't know, one of the most legendary players in Chilean history. Tough guy, had the mohawk and everything, right? Did you know at the time, he was 19?
He was 19 at the time. I was 21, 22.
Did you know he was like, was he, I don't remember at 19, was he already a big time star? Or did you know that you were getting like a legendary player's jersey at that time?
He wasn't a big time star, but in the qualifying, he was one of the guys that, you know, who really well for Chile. He was already playing in the Italian league. They were, he was playing in the German league. He ended up being in the Italian league. The other two guys, there's the other two guys who played in the Italian league for Udinese, which it was Islas and Sanchez. Other legendary guys, Alexis Sanchez and Mauricio Islas. And he was playing actually in Germany. And he was already a known name in Germany. And they told me I had to defend him in corner kicks. And they were telling us how this team was not the tallest team, but they're the most aggressive in corner kicks. And that was the most aggressive guy, and I had to take him. And so, you know, after it was tough to defend him, and after the game ended, I said, oh my God, I got to exchange jerseys with this guy.
So you had to mark Vidal.
Vidal and the corner kicks.
How'd you do?
I did okay. He won a header. I slipped.
Yeah.
In one of the plays because this is the grass is different. They did like a hybrid in this.
Okay.
It was a weird feel. And I slipped in one of the plays and he headed the ball. And I'm like, oh my God, if he scored that, I would have been killed.
Any other jerseys, like big time ones? Is that the best one you got in the 2 World Cups you played in? Anybody else?
I would say I didn't exchange with anybody else. We played Spain.
Oh, wow.
And I went and I got subbed and I went to change. And I tried to go back to the locker room to get the jersey. And there was some FIFA stuff or some security didn't let me go back to the locker room. So I couldn't exchange jerseys with the Spanish guys who ended up winning, being the eventual champions.
Yeah, that was an incredible team. Yeah. So, hey, listen, there are certain moments in your life, career, Roger, you kind of talked about it with the World Cup, where you realize there's levels to things, right? And so living in Kansas City and becoming a diehard soccer fan, I'm surrounded by friends and people I work with that would always give me a hard time for being obsessed with soccer. Like, they're like, oh, you think about soccer all the time. We're talking about something else, and you're still talking about soccer. It wasn't until I went out to start doing some work at CBS Golazo where I realized how many levels there are to people above me when it comes to their passion for the game of soccer. If you told most of my friends, there's a guy that I work with who like, I don't even know how much more exponentially this guy lives and breathes soccer than me, but I don't know how he does it. His name is Nico Cantor. And so for those of you that are watching the pod, that listen to the pod, and I'm going to try to put this into context for you. If you're not a big soccer fan, let's say you watch Red Zone. NFL Red Zone is obviously one of the most popular shows in sports. And Scott Hansen, who hosts that show, his knowledge of the NFL is incredible. He goes from play to play, and he doesn't seem to miss a beat. Imagine if you took the largest soccer tournament on planet Earth, which is the UEFA Champions League. They also have a secondary tournament as well, and you had somebody host that show. It's called the Golazo Show, and that's what Nico, amongst a million other things that he does, but he hosts that show, and he's talking about every club team from everywhere in Europe, and sometimes teams that I don't even know how you pronounce the name of the country, let alone the team or the players on it, and he knows all of it. And then he goes on his honeymoon and he's still posting videos about, different things that happen. This guy is the man when it comes to the knowledge of the game, the passion for the game. It comes out in everything he says and does, and he's joining us now. I don't know if that's a good enough intro, Nico. Nico Cantor, how are you, man?
Nate, that was an awesome intro. Thank you very much. You, like I am, crazy broadcaster for this sport, and we're lucky enough to be with Roger, who played this at the highest level at the Olympics with the national team. So it's just a pleasure to just get to do this for a living, and it's honestly it's a blessing.
So wait, you two know each other going all the way back to the bubble, is that right? Tell me how you met Nico.
That is right, Nico. So it was, I think they want to do a little video with us, and I think they want to do it with Alan Pulido too. and they wanted it, us doing something at the bubble. And what came through was doing mini golf, and Nico would come and play with us. And so then he got to introduce himself, and I'll ask you a little bit more about this, Nico, because I want to set the stage here. You come from a broadcasting royalty, from and a little bit I want to hear about your background and about your legendary dad, who is, it's one of my idols. But yes, we met at the bubble, and then he also told me he was Honduran too, half Honduran. So I love this guy even more now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love this guy even more, but that's how we met. But Nico, I want you to tell me a little bit about your background, and obviously your dad, Andres Cantor, and how you follow into footsteps, but you also work very hard and bring the game in a whole different way than your dad does.
Roger, you're not going to tell everybody that I waxed you in mini golf?
Is that true?
I think he did. I think he was better than me. Yeah, I was concentrating more on doing well at the soccer.
Yeah,
that's true. That's true. I who else? Alan Pulido was there. Johnny Russell was there. I'm trying to think who else, but we got a nice little group of guys. We weren't allowed to do too many things with the players because they were like a different tier. They were getting COVID tested every single day, whereas like the 4 people from the press corps, which was Stefano Fusaro, who's also a colleague at CBS, he was there, and we were getting tested every other day. So, we couldn't touch the players, no high fives, no anything. So at least the one thing that we were allowed to do was mini golf, and then that was 50 days in the bubble. I played ping pong with Diego Valeri, and that was like to the extent that we could do stuff with the players because they were just a different tier. But that's Roger gave us the access. It was awesome, and then he did find out that I was half Honduran. My mom is Honduran. My dad is a legend. My mom is just as much as a legend, by the way. The hero behind all the success that my dad has is my mom, and I have more family in Honduras than I do in Argentina, and I love going to Honduras. It's a big part of my identity, really. Like, people obviously through soccer tend to see a lot of the Argentine in me because of my dad, but man, it's funny because I soccer has opened up the world to me. It's made me go to so many different places in the world, and I like accents, I like languages, and I like imitating accents. And my Honduran family makes fun that I cannot talk like a Honduran. And it's the worst because I don't think it's a particularly strong suit in one of my accents. Although if I hear a Honduran, I can catch it immediately, and I'm just as proud as a Honduran, Roger.
Man, there's a lot of different directions I want to go with this now, Nico, but I do want to go back to his point about, the Cantor family. And part of that is because I'm now a father of 3, and my oldest son has zero interest in watching a game with me, let alone following in my footsteps as a broadcaster. So I don't know what I'm doing wrong in that regard. But like for you, to grow up in that, like to grow up in a family with a, how old were you when you realized my pops is a big deal, and when did you decide like I want to do the same thing?
So it kind of all happened naturally. So imagine when my dad hits the catapult moment is 94, right? He was already kind of famous in 1990. I think he broadcasted almost, I think he did every single game. He broadcasted every single game from the 1990 World Cup. But 94, the World Cup being here in the US was kind of his catapult moment, and it launched his career just to a different stratosphere. I was too little then. I was maybe 1 year old. And I remember that my dad, that I had a different dad because he would get recognized on the street, at restaurants. And I knew that there was something special going on with my dad, that he would have to leave. I remember in 98 when he left for the World Cup. The World Cups are always really hard. And then 2002, I remember crying with my sister. My dad was gone a month and a half, right? And all the way to the other side of the world. It was, that was particularly challenging, but I always liked soccer. I always played soccer, but my dad kind of never forced me to do anything. He says he never forced me to do anything, but I almost subconsciously think that I didn't have any choice. And I just consumed and absorbed all of the conversations that we always had. My dad would take me to the TV studio when I was little. I remember when I would go to Telemundo as a kid, like all those late night shifts that nobody loves to work, those 11 p.m. graveyard hours. I was there with my dad, and I was like, I loved how they did TV. I would talk to the producers as like a 9-year-old, and I don't know. I know that I'm in a very privileged position to like understand how TV works and kind of understand how the sausage gets made, because a lot of people don't even know, they just kind of turn on the TV or turn on streaming and they just see us, and learning the trade is a big part of being able to perform in it. And I got that privilege from just being around my dad and consuming not only soccer, but consuming TV as well from a very, very young age. And I don't know, people always ask me, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would always say, I want to be like my dad. I mean, today, I don't really do exactly what my dad does, especially because I work in a different language. When I used to work in soccer, I used to do a lot of the things that the play-by-play and the reporting, pitch side and stuff like that. But now my role has kind of changed. Nonetheless, we're both still on TV. So I'm fulfilling a dream of mine, and I've worked hard to get here. I'm gonna admit, like, having my dad's last name for sure opens doors, and that's like a jump start that a lot of people aren't afforded, and I totally recognize that. But the door can be open for you, and it might not be open for everybody. But I always say that if you don't put in the work and the effort, they're gonna kick you right back out on the street, So I've made like an extra effort to go above and beyond, be super demanding with every single show, with every single preparation. So and from that, I've learned from my dad to be the best that you can be and give 100% effort to the sport that we all love.
I have a question now that you kind of touched base on, you get to do it in a different language, but you do it in both language. And when you transmit the sport to your audience in Spanish or in English, do you change a little bit because, the way each language or each culture views the sport, or you go about the same way?
Roger, I think that's a fascinating question. When I speak in English and I broadcast in English, I'm kind of doing an active effort of reeling everything in because I don't think the American audience or the English ear is used to the craziness of a Spanish language broadcast. And although amongst American broadcasters, I would say I'm one of the least reeled in. I like to show my emotion. I wear my heart on my sleeve. What you hear from me is what you get from me in the day-to-day. I mean, both of you guys know me very personally, and I like to mess around, and I like to feel the sport, and I like the passion, and to me, soccer's not that serious. It's fun. It's how you identify. It's part of who you are. It's part of how you grew up. It's part of your culture. It's part of your language. And I feel like the American ear, and even I would just say the English language ear, at least in England and the United States, which are the two markets that I know best that speak English. I don't want to speak for other English language markets. They're not ready to hear the Latino dialed up to 100%. Whereas in Spanish, I'm not even concerned about that. Yeah, right. For me, the crazier, the better. If it's a last minute goal, I'm extending the goal as much as I can. It's the madness of the moment. And I'm trying to be up here. I'm worried that I'm not meeting the moment as much as I can. And I've had crazy World Cup games. There was one that I went viral for during the World Cup. I called the Portugal-Morocco match from the quarterfinal that Morocco ends up winning and becomes the first African nation in a semifinal of a World Cup, and first of many. It's probably the first majority Islamic nation as well to be in a semifinal of a World Cup. First from North Africa, or at least the Arab world, and that's a caveat because I don't know how many Moroccans will consider themselves African, but I digress. It was a major moment that I could only have met with this with everything dialed up to an 100. I don't know how I would have done it in English because I didn't have that moment in English. But it definitely would have been different. Not to say that one's worse than the other. Like, I hear English language broadcasters meet the moment in a very different way that to me, to my persona, just seems a little bit less natural.
Man, I could geek out over this conversation as a English language American trying to do soccer, because let's be honest, there's two types of audiences for soccer in the United States. There's the type that watches the English Premier League, and they're used to listening to it in English language. They're listening to English-based announcers, England-based announcers, and then there's the audience that watches in Spanish. So I'll give you a perfect example of this, guys. The first game I ever did on a network was a Fox game. This was, 8 or 9 years ago. And I was nervous as heck. I was excited for the opportunity. I called all my buddies to tell them, hey, I know you're not the biggest soccer fans, but watch this game. My producer, after the game was over, was from England. And he wanted to do a post-mortem type thing. And, let's critique the game and how you did. The first thing he said was, you talked too much. You need to let the game breathe a little bit more. You need to dial it back. It's too much energy. And then I called my best friend who's from Mexico, and he's like, my parents called me. They wanted to know why you didn't talk more. Like, there was all this silence during the game.
Crazy.
So, like their attitude was, you didn't talk enough. You didn't have enough energy. But then my boss was saying you talked too much and had too much energy. And I love this idea, Nico, because I think, and this kind of brings it back to this World Cup that's coming. In 1994, the announcers that I watched calling the World Cup were famous American sportscasters who didn't know soccer. They were brought in they were guys that worked at ABC that were brought in to take a crash course on soccer, and let's try to introduce this sport to the country. And now you look all these years later, and we have a professional league here with 30 teams, and you have nerds like me that love the game and want to try to be as educated as we can on it as possible. But I still think we're trying to find our American voice as soccer broadcasters. And I think you're a perfect example of what is America? Well, we borrow from everyone.
100%.
Right? We borrow from some of the English sensibilities. We borrow from South American sensibilities. And don't you think we should get to the point as Americans where we have the confidence to call the game in our own voice and not really feel like we have to be doing somebody else's version of the game?
I totally agree. Why are we copying a country that has a completely different culture than ours? We're loud, we're brash, we're awkward, we're in your face.
Yeah.
We sell everything. It's a show. Go to our NBA games. It's different from England. Although England speaks the same language and they set the standard within the sport. I do think that if a nation is very established within the sport, other nations try to copy it. Similar things happen to South America. Argentina has a very strong school of broadcasting, and a lot of the closer Latin American countries within the region tend to adopt some things, but they don't abandon who they are. And I don't want people to misinterpret what I'm saying. I was watching Manchester City Arsenal. It was the biggest game in Arsenal's last 20 years in the Premier League history, right? It's probably the most significant match since the Invincibles, right? Or I might be exaggerating, but not that much. And I'm not saying that what the broadcasters were doing was wrong, because they actually did a really good job. But culturally, there's something in me that just makes me want to go, give me more. Come on. It's the biggest moment of the season. And that, for example, to me, it comes off in English almost like as a bit much. But within my culture, if I were to do that in Spanish, es el mejor momento de la temporada. Se están jugando todo. That's normal.
Oh, yeah.
That's normal. And I don't know if you've ever been in a house full of Latinos and they're shouting at each other, and it's a normal tone of voice, and I feel like a foreigner walking into that house would think that everybody's angry at each other in that house, and they're just discussing. It's a very passionate thing. So everybody lives football very culturally different. And sometimes I'm going to be honest, I like listening to the English broadcasts from England because I think they hit the right tone in a lot of moments. And sometimes I forget that my dad's broadcasting on the Spanish language network. And I found out late that he's doing. I should have listened to him. And then I kind of get in trouble that I forgot that my dad was broadcasting because I really do like the English language. But then there's some stuff that we like. MLS is completely ours. It's not England.
Yep.
It's more Latin America than it is England, because we have. I mean, since the inception of Major League Soccer, the biggest talent that has given some of the greatest, if not the greatest, moments of Major League Soccer have been Latino. And I think we could play into that, but I'm not telling anybody how to do their job. I think we'll get there eventually, Nate. We will find what the American voice is. And just like it's the melting pot is so large, I think if you find somebody in pick a random state, Arkansas, and you tell them that I'm American, they'd be like, no, hold up, he's not American. And that's the reality of our country. I am American. I was born here. And this is how the Americans from where I grew up sound. And I'm going to sound differently as a broadcaster than a person from Arkansas, than a person from Washington. And none of it's wrong. But we've only been in the mainstream, if that, since the mid-90s, right, with our sport. So eventually we'll get there. England has been in the mainstream for hundreds of plus years. So eventually, the more voices in it, the better, I say.
That's crazy that you touched culture on that. And so I would want to ask, then you touched the culture, and now there's a show now, Golazo, that's happening daily now. It's a show that, when I was growing up in America, we didn't have that. And so can you talk a little bit about like the evolution of the show and how that now can change the culture? And now we can have actually broadcasters now that understand the game. They see you every day on TV. They see the other guys on TV, and you guys are telling how the sport's being played in your own way. And that could bring the culture like you're talking about right now. So can you talk about the evolution and where you think this is going to go later on?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, what we're doing at CBS Sports Golazo is completely innovative, 24 hours streaming on Paramount Plus. Before in the U.S., there are other networks that tried. Perhaps it wasn't the right time. But there is a thirst for soccer in this country, a massive, massive thirst. We are a soccer country. I would say we consume more soccer, more football than anywhere in Europe. Because in England, they'll watch the Premier League, and in Spain, they'll watch La Liga, and in Italy, they'll watch Serie A. Here, we watch all three and many other leagues. Everybody here has a Premier League team, a La Liga team, a Serie A team, a Bundesliga team. We're a very knowledgeable group of fans, and it's growing. And I think what we do at Golazo via either Morning Footy, which is on every day, or our Scoreline shows towards later in the night, or our live coverage of matches, we try to bring that multicultural perspective to the game that I think it deserves. And we broadcast it through many lenses because it's funny. I think in even in Argentina, I consume a lot of Argentine TV. You don't have to be so aware of what's going on in other countries. They try to, but here in the US, you get found out if you're culturally unaware. If you say, I've heard things on Argentine TV, on English TV, on Spanish TV said about other countries that it's like, wow, if we said that here on American TV,
yes,
we would get they field day with us right in the comments. So as broadcasters, we need to be so buttoned up. We're held, Americans, to a completely different standard because we are broadcasting to the rest of the world, and especially in the social media age, some I don't know. Sometimes we have clips that go viral in Africa.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we have a bunch of Nigerians that are following us because we said one thing, or in Turkey, for example, you know, and if you come, like, I feel like it's so wrong nowadays to come off as ignorant when you have a lot of tools. It's still difficult. You know, I don't think we try to be experts about countries that we don't live in or don't never even been to. And I think that's the trick. That's a tricky part as being American broadcasters, because we're broadcasting this to the world. And we want to broadcast with nuance, and I think that's at CBS Sports Golazo. I think that's our goal, and we hit it a lot of the time. I would say that we cover a lot of these things with nuance, as if we lived in that country, or at least we just don't talk because we saw the score on our phone, right? We talk because we know, because we're invested in these storylines. And I think that's all credit to from the top down, from our production staff, and the incredible diversity that we have of not only people in front of the screen, but behind in production as well, that are able to give all of these perspectives. Because I don't know, you know, Roger, what happens if, you know, how would you feel if there was an Olympia Motagua and they're just talking about Olympia Motagua as if they didn't know? I want somebody to tell me, like, you know, Olympia Motagua is the biggest derby in Honduras, and there's so much to chew off the bone there. And at least what I try to do, I try to bring that nuance, especially with the Golazo show, that we, you know, there's a lot of teams that people probably haven't even heard of. Nate says that he can't pronounce, and sometimes me too. I'm sitting, well. I'm sitting there going.
There's letters like you can't be
club.
You're not an expert in every single language. I'm still trying to become fluent in Spanish, and that's been like a 3-year process. And you're going to throw Bulgarian names at me with letters that I'm like, I'm not even sure what that symbol means when it comes to pronunciation. And you got to rattle them. I'm so impressed. I will tell you this, Roger, too. You go out to Golazo Network. I've had the chance to I get to go out there every once in a while and fill in for shows. And I think it's my favorite place on planet Earth. And when I say that, because as a soccer nerd, you know, you're looking for your community, right? And so, yeah, I got my Arsenal buddies that I go watch games with here, you know, things like that.
They must be sad.
You show up on any given day it's tough, man. It's not easy. But
it's not over. It's not over.
It's not over, man, but we're hanging on by a thread. But when you walk into the office, there's 14 television screens, and there's 14 people sitting around, from the on-air guys to the producers to the stats guys to the graphic guys, and they all have a different team, right? And it could be somebody from Serie A. There's 3 guys over here that love their favorite teams are from Serie A. There's another guy that's a Barcelona fan. There's a couple of, you know, and everybody's invested in all these different games, and they're just talking trash to each other. And it was like the first time I went, I realized how big the game really is, you know, because I had like my teams that I followed, and I listened to my podcast. I thought I knew. And then I got out there, I'm like, every league, every country in the world has a league and a rivalry that's more important than anything else to anybody. And then you add the women's game into it, and now there's women's. Every country in the world has a women's league, and then you got club and country, and so you're trying to keep up with all of it. And Nico does it, and that is what is amazing about the place. But it also, I want to bring it back to this World Cup, because I understand you might grace us with your presence in Kansas City a little bit during the World Cup, Nico. We've never had anything like this in Kansas City. Okay, this we've never hosted a Super Bowl, and everything that I've been told, I've never been to a World Cup, is that one World Cup game is like 5 Super Bowls. We got 6 of those coming. We've got the Argentinian national team, we've got the English national team, we got the Dutch national team, and Algeria all here. Nothing like this has ever come to Kansas City. So how would you describe what's coming, you know, to our audience? And also, like, how do you think it will change a city like Kansas City to have this moment here?
I've had the privilege of going to every World Cup since Germany 2006, and I've learned so much about every country that I've been to. This is going to be an opportunity not only for Kansas City to see how all of these soccer cultures operate and live the sport and breathe the sport and celebrate, but it's going to be an opportunity for all of these other countries to learn and get to know Kansas City. Now, they might see us as a monolith, Americans, right? Because sometimes that happens when you talk about a country, and little do a lot of people know, people from Kansas City are so different to people from New York City. They're actually incredibly much more nicer than people from New York City. But you know, when I left South Africa, every place that I went, everybody was so happy, and that's what I walked away with. Like in South Africa, the South Africans were so proud to host the world. And I've been to Kansas City for Gold Cups only, actually, and it was probably, I didn't even get to like spend time properly in KC. So I'm gonna be there for Argentina games and for other games as well. I'll be in Kansas City for a couple of days, and even for me, I'm gonna get to know more about my country, and it's soccer that's taking me there, which is the most beautiful thing. I've gotten to go so many places in our country only because of soccer. I've probably been to more NFL stadiums than the average NFL fan, and it's not because of American football, it's because of football. So it's honestly a privilege. I'm so excited to go, and I'm so curious what Argentines are going to think of Kansas City barbecue.
Yeah. Because your barbecue's not bad, by the way.
Whoa. Not bad. Whoa.
Pretty damn good.
I would say superlative.
We got to touch on the Honduran food, though, here in Kansas City. Because, Nico, and my neighbor where I grew up, and you've been to these places, Roger, there's some Honduran food you're going to have to try when you come here. Where does he got to go, and what's he got to get?
Delicia. Let's give him a shout. Delicias is a Honduran restaurant here that is very good. You know, the cooking is amazing there, and I go there almost every Sunday. Every Sunday I do either try all the foods that they have available. And it's an amazing place. Delicias. It's in Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota Avenue. Yes. Yeah, that's where I grew up, man.
What's their go-to dish?
Yeah.
Baleadas or any Honduran coconut soup.
What was the first thing you said? Baleadas?
Baleadas. What
is that?
That's what we were talking earlier. It's a flour tortilla, and like Nico describes it, kind of stretchy. It's different than any flour tortilla that you'll see around the world. And you put refried beans in it. You put cheese, Honduran cheese, what is different, and cream on it. Okay. But you can also add avocado if you want. You can add eggs, and the evolution of the baleada too has been now that people put plantains and they put steak on it, but you can make it however simple you wanted to make it, and it's just, you know, poor people food. Fire. We call it in Honduras. It's very simple. Anybody can make it. It's amazing.
Nate, if I can interject here very quickly, you're actually gonna like this. But baleada, the word baleada,
there you go.
Something that's shot up. That's like literally like a gun down, shot up. And legend has it, I'm not saying it's fact, but legend has it that dish is called baleada because there was a woman that made these tortillas, and they were so good. She was the one that made them, and everybody would go to her house, and one day her house got shot up. And then she became famous because she got shot up, and everybody would say, let's go to the baleada's house. Let's go to the house, to the lady's house that got shut up. Yeah. Vamos donde la baleada. And that's how it stuck. And baleada, which literally means like shot, like the shot one, is the name of the dish. And that is the national dish of Honduras.
I don't want to go into other stories, but other people see if the beans doesn't make your stomach feel well, then it can be named after that too.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just say Roger wasn't eating too many baleadas before matches.
Yeah, no, rushing off to the restroom maybe if you had to. Now I do know this, Nico. I've got a buddy in my neighborhood who is from Buenos Aires. You'll be happy to know he's a Boca Juniors fan. And he took me to a restaurant here in town called Cafe Buenos Aires. And we had some chimichurri, we had some empanadas. the other day, and they were phenomenal. So will you try some Kansas City-based Argentinian food when you come here, or are you just going to go straight Kansas City barbecue?
I might just go straight Kansas City barbecue. I haven't had proper KC barbecue. I had it like at the hotel that we were staying at before a Gold Cup game. And I'm talking many, many years ago. And I wasn't so well versed in Kansas City culture, like forget gastronomy, like just culture, and I've learned a lot about it over the years, and as I've just discovered the world. Basically, my cousin, who's Argentine family, American but Argentine roots like me, her boyfriend is from Kansas City. And I've learned so much about Kansas City, and I've invited him over to my house many times to eat Argentine barbecue, and he's like, every time he's floored, right? Oh my gosh, this is so good, and it's like it's so difficult for him to admit that it's like it might be better than Kansas City barbecue, but he won't go there. But he's like very, very close. So and I know it's good. And I want to be blown away when I go, because we're talking very possibly the two best barbecue cultures in the world, and I'm not exaggerating.
I think I'm going to second that. I don't think of any of the barbecue I've had from elsewhere in the world there's any that I like better than Argentine. Is that how you say it? Argentine barbecue?
You could say both.
Argentinian.
It's both are acceptable.
Okay. All right, Nico. Before we wrap this up, we play a little game. And by the way, one thing I do want to say to you is part of the Kansas City culture is our hospitality. So what we do when I have broadcast crews in, I invite everybody to my house, and I got a smoker there, so I smoke barbecue, and we have a soccer pitch in the backyard. So you have an open invitation to a backyard barbecue and a kickabout if you have time when you come to Kansas City.
Thank you, man.
Because most people will tell you that the barbecue at their own house is better than the stuff at the restaurants.
Right,
you know what I mean? And the restaurants are phenomenal. They're all good. Okay, we're going to play a little game here, a little five-a-side. And the topic today is best World Cup games that you have ever seen. Ooh. So we each have to pick five. Do we feel comfortable? I mean, Nico could probably rattle off 50 of them. But I think I can do this. Are you guys good with this? You good to play?
Let's do it.
Okay, Nico, you get first pick, and we'll go in you, Roger, me, and then we'll go back in reverse order, okay?
So I get first pick. It's obviously going to be 2022 World Cup final. Argentina 3, France 3. Argentina wins in penalties.
I mean, that's not even recency bias, because that's like the best game I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it just all of the different things, the way the game went, the legacy of Lionel Messi at stake, all those things. I can't. Nobody's going to top that. I'm going to go with another. Wait, no, it's you, Roger.
It's me?
Yeah, you get to go.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the first World Cup I ever watched, and it was the only game I remember. I don't know why it's the only game. I watched in Honduras, and is the finals here in the United States with Brazil, Italy, going into penalties. That set me my goals to wanting to be professional one day. Watching that game, and the whole country was going for Brazil, maybe because it's a Latin American country. But the Italian league was very well watched in Honduras, but everybody was going for Brazil, and that game is vividly in my head.
Okay, that's a good shout. All right, I'm going to go with another final that France lost. I'm going to say 2006. That was really the World Cup that swept me away. I was a person who liked soccer at that point in my life, but the 2006 World Cup was the one where I went from liking it to being obsessed with it. And it was that whole tournament. It wasn't just that final game, but the drama of Zinedine Zidane losing his mind, this player who I had seen won the World Cup already before, and the back and forth in that game, that intensity, the insanity of it all, like just this moment of one of the greatest players to ever live, just absolutely losing it in the most important moment. That was one of those things that just got burned into my brain. So that's going to be my first pick. And then I'm going to go with something that this is a personal thing. And I'm going to go with the Landon Donovan.
Does it snake?
Yeah, we're snaking. We're snaking back and forth.
So it goes that way and then it snakes. Okay,
fair, so I'm gonna go second pick here. We're doing this. We're making it fair, Nico. I'm gonna go with Landon Donovan's goal against Algeria, the 2010 That was the SB that's sitting over Roger's shoulder. That is Benny Feilhaber's SB because they won for Moment of the Year.
Wow.
And he was on the field, Benny was, when that happened. So I was at the 810 zone in Leawood, Kansas, with a few hundred people just absolutely losing our minds when it happened. So that's number 2 for me.
Well, what an amazing game. So it's me now, right?
Yeah.
The game I'm going to go, let's see. So I'm going to go to 90. I'm going to go to 98 World Cup. And I remember the finals, but I also remember this game. And I believe it's Croatia beat Germany 3-0. And I just remember because I didn't think much about Croatia. And that's when I got to start to know who Croatia really was.
Yeah.
And they beat 3-0, and I believe it was
Croatia's
in the quarterfinal.
first World Cup.
That was their first World Cup.
First ever World Cup for Croatia.
Yep. And so, well, because it was known as Yugoslavia then, and then it became Croatia. Okay. They were unbelievable. And they keep talking about how small of a nation they were and all this, and the jerseys. The jerseys for me, I was very young, and so for me it was Croatia, and you get to see their double Suker, I believe was his name. Is his name. Their forward, unbelievable player, and so for me that was the game that I remember the most. That was one of
I love that.
in '98. So I'm going World Cups that I remember from '94 now.
Now, how many other Argentine victories is Nico going to go? You get 2 picks back to back now here, Nico.
Oh, I get 2 picks back to back. Wow. Davor Šuker at that World Cup was top goal scorer of the World Cup, by the way. Although I do want to caveat one moment that I'm not going to take as in top 5, but it was a goal that I celebrated with a lot of pride. Carlos Cosli's first goal against Ecuador, 2014 in Curitiba. I was there. And I got to see Honduras score a World Cup. Roger played in that game. So that was a big moment of pride. Ecuador ended up clawing their way back with 2 Ener Valencia goals. Nonetheless, Ener Valencia, who always shows up at World Cups. But I got to see a Honduras goal at a World Cup, which was pretty remarkable. So I'm going to take Argentina-Mexico quarterfinal 2006. In Leipzig, Germany.
Maxi Golazo?
It's Maxi's Golazo. Mexico scores first very early on. Crespo ties it up off of a Riquelme corner kick. And then into extra time, Messi gives an outlet pass like a 19-year-old Messi, finds Sorin, and Sorin just hits across the pitch. Maxi off of his chest, scores with his left. One of the most iconic Argentina goals. I think it's one of the best goals ever scored at World Cups, and Argentina goes into the quarterfinal. Oh, and then I get a second pick.
Okay, now you get to round number 3 here. Starts with Nico.
Ooh.
Now we're digging deep.
Yeah.
You're putting me under pressure here now.
What about, how cruel would this be, but Germany 7, Brazil 1. It's one of those score lines. Yeah, semifinals of 2014 in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. It's one of those score lines that you don't often see at a World Cup, and that ended up being historic. I was in Rio, not in where the game was played, but I was at the beach in Copacabana, and it was cloudy right before the game. It was like ominous, and that ended up happening, and it felt like a national tragedy was unfolding. I saw crazy scenes, and it started raining at halftime, and we left. Chaos broke out on the beaches of Copacabana, and we had a friend of ours that was staying nearby at an apartment, and we rushed into that apartment to watch the rest of the game, and the goals just kept on piling on after. We couldn't believe it. It was like watching a murder unfold in front of our eyes, and I'm sorry for being so dramatic, but it's or maybe even violent, but it did feel like we were watching a national tragedy unfold.
Nico, was that the game where Neymar had been hurt and the players brought
Correct.
out like his jersey?
I don't
it was
know.
almost
I don't remember
like they were mourning his loss.
So Brazil beats Colombia in the quarterfinals right before, and Juan Camilo Zúñiga, the left back that was at Napoli at the time, I believe he was at Napoli at the time. Yep. He goes up to contest an aerial 50-50 with Ney, and he just gets him with his knee right in his back, and it took him out of the game, and it took him out of the semifinals. Yeah. So Neymar didn't play in that semifinal. nonetheless. And I don't think, you know who else I think was missing? I think Thiago Silva was missing from that semifinal, if I'm not mistaken. I have to double check that.
Yeah. I had this image. I think that some of the players went out with like his jersey when they did the lineup before the game, and it was like, it almost seemed like they were mourning before the game even started, and it just seemed like a bad omen for the thing to go. All right, number 3 for you, Roger.
Number 3, now we're going to take it to 2002 World Cup. I believe 2002, U.S. 3-3 with Portugal. Is that correct?
Group
that
stage.
game, it was at 2 a.m. in the morning in Denver, Colorado. I got up. I was very tired, and then the U.S. was winning. I believe 3-0, maybe 3-1. It got to 2-1, 3-1, and then I don't want to remind the Americans, there was an own goal by Jeff Agus, I believe, and to make it 3-3 maybe, I'm not sure, but that was one of the games that I loved watching. It was good that America could do it, young Cristiano, and so for me it was like, hey, America can keep up with this power teams, and so for me that was one game that I like in that World Cup.
That was the best run the U.S. has ever had to this point in the World Cup, and a lot of Americans were asleep during it because of the time zone. I'm going to go with another draw against Portugal. I'm going to go 2014 in Brazil. The Jermaine Jones goal was one of the best goals I've ever seen in U.S. men's national team history. There's an added layer to it because our guys that are part of this show, Graham Zusi and Matt Beasler, were part of that. There's this iconic photo of Matt standing over Cristiano Ronaldo, who's gesturing at the refs and complaining. And it's like this, like, hey, there's our guy from Kansas doing this. Ronaldo did get a goal at the very end. Because the U.S. looked like they were going to win that game. But that draw did allow them to advance through the group of death at that World Cup, and we hosted the watch party in the Power and Light. So that'll be my third pick. I'm going to go with the Croatian match as well because, Nico, I told you my neighborhood where I grew up in Kansas City was an immigrant-based neighborhood. My family was Polish. But right on the other side of the hill that I lived on was what's called Strawberry Hill, which is a stronghold of Croatian Americans. And they all gather at St. John the Baptist Social Club and Church. And I grew up with all these Croatian guys and gals from my high school, and they have massive watch parties in their social club, and the tiles of the floor are red and white checkerboards. There's an old-fashioned bowling alley in the basement. Even the place is like a throwback to the 1950s. And they had a watch party when Croatia beat Brazil. That was this last World Cup, correct? I'm trying to remember. I might have had some Slipovitz when I was there that night. But that win over Brazil was one of those. It wasn't the prettiest performance in the world or anything like that, but it was like so classically Croatian, and getting to be there with like hundreds and hundreds of Croatians that were going crazy. That was a massive one for me. That to me, like Croatia is like one of those teams that everybody that's not Croatian kind of roots for at the World Cup because they have that David versus Goliath thing. So that's my fourth pick.
Yeah, Nate, I've heard of that place, and I always wanted to go to
I'll
a
take
game
it.
there. So
yeah,
if there's a person I want to go with, it would be you.
We'll do it.
Yeah,
it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's me now, right?
Yeah.
So another game. Let's go. So it would be 2006. We're going to 2006 World Cup now.
Yeah.
A game. I remember many games from there. I think I'm gonna go to the finals with Brazil. Brazil against Germany, right? Is that correct?
The 2006
Brazil,
was
France.
Brazil, France.
Yeah.
Brazil, France was.
2006.
was
Sorry, guys.
was
I'm
Italy,
going back.
Was Italy, France, wasn't
Yep.
it?
I'm going
So
back.
98?
2002 World Cup Finals. Brazil against Germany. That's what it was. Yes, that's what it was.
Germany.
The Brazil. I love
Yeah.
that game. Rivaldo and Ronaldo. I love Ronaldo. They were
The OG Ronaldo.
the OG Ronaldo and Rivaldo were amazing. They combined for the goals. The way they score, I don't know if it's the first or second goal, the way they combined in the box, for me was an amazing game. And that's one of the games, that I would, that was one of the best games in that World Cup.
All right, Nico, you get round 4 and 5 here.
Okay, round 4 and 5. Oh, I had one in my head. So I don't want to choose another Argentina one. So you know what? I'm gonna go with inaugural match at the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, which I also had the privilege to be at. South Africa against Mexico, and it's such a full circle moment for the World Cup here in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, because the inaugural match at this World Cup is gonna be Mexico against South Africa. But going back to 2010, Soccer City, Johannesburg. It was packed. First African nation to ever host a World Cup. The World Cup was coming to Mother Africa. Everybody was so proud. And the first goal that we see was Sifiwe Chabalala from like just outside the box. Rip one against Conejo Perez. And he just clocks it upper 90. It's a laser beam of a shot. And it was the first goal scored with the Jabulani ball that a lot of people were either complaining that it was too light, and you could just line one up. Gio Van Bronckhorst scores, I think, the best Jabulani goal. I know a lot of people will say Forlan dominated it, but in the semifinals against Uruguay, Gio Van Bronckhorst scores one of the best goals in that World Cup. So that inaugural game is definitely one that is for the storybooks. And then I gotta choose one more. Ooh, this is tough. I got one. Another match that I was also at, 2018, round of 16, and just because I was there and got to now I thought of another one. I'm gonna say this one. 2018 World Cup in Moscow. Colombia against England. It's a match that England was leading for the majority. Colombia was playing better, but Jerry Mina ends up scoring a tying header to send the game into extra time. And let me tell you that the loudest goal that I've ever heard, usually like goals in Latin America are like, whoa, it's like it's got this O that's a bass. It's very like, oh, but the Colombia tying goal was, like it could shatter windows, like the decibels and the frequency was so loud. And that would probably be my fifth. But I'm just realizing that I forgot Morocco, Portugal, which definitely should be in there.
Let's see. There's a few I remember right now, and I'm gonna go with I believe 2010 Ghana against Uruguay. You remind me of one right there. When you spoke about Uruguay, what a game! Infamous red card for Suarez. What an amazing game from both national teams. Bit unlucky for Ghana, but for me, that game was just amazing. The players, I also was going to talk about now. I always remember when you were talking about France, too, and I'm adding this other one here because I don't want to leave that one out when Senegal beat France. And
2002.
2002 World Cup, that's what it was. Yeah.
We get a rematch of that this time, right?
Yeah.
They're in the same group, right? If I remember.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Hopefully I didn't take any of those from you there.
No,
but I wanted to add that one too because it definitely stayed in my mind. And
as I wrap it up here, I'm surprised. I'm going to finish one that involves Argentina, Nico, because for me, the Argentina-Netherlands match in 2022 had everything. Like it had everything. It had incredible goals. It had guys fighting each other. It had guys taunting each other on the bench. It had two of the great powers in the history of the world going toe to toe. But I just remember how many times I just went, oh my God. Everything in that game was so intense. That's going to be my fifth pick. So incredible stuff. We can do this forever. Nico, hey man, thank you so much for the time. This has been you've dedicated a lot of your time. You're a busy guy. We can't wait to see you here in Kansas City. We're going to roll out the red carpet for you, man.
Nate, Roger, thank you guys very much for having me on. I mean, an hour talking to you guys flies by. It's so fun, and I drop whatever I'd need to do to chat with you guys on Heart and Goal. So thanks for having me.
And this is the Heart and Goal podcast. Thanks to our entire crew for putting it together. Thanks to Roger. Thanks to Nico. And thanks to you guys for listening, subscribing, liking, and engaging. Let us know what you think of our five-a-side and if there's some games that we missed. And we will see you next time on Heart and Goal.